Good afternoon, everyone. And on behalf of the Department of Psychiatry, we are organizing this PG revision course, which will be conducted today as well as tomorrow. So today we have 5 speakers, and tomorrow also we have 5 speakers. And before we just start the program, I would like to just give few general instructions alone. Postgraduates, once you have logged in, I think there is no option of unmuting yourself because of the huge number of residents. So we will be finding it very difficult to allow unmuting people when asking questions. So kindly post all your questions in the chat box, and as soon as the speaker finishes the presentation, we will ensure that most of your questions are answered during the given time period. So as was discussed earlier itself, as it was mailed earlier, if there are any questions unaddressed, for the sake of exam purpose, we will compile the answers and then mail it to the group once the sessions are over. Okay, so as we start, this is our campus. So this is our Medical College Hospital. So we reside in Chennai. Mr. Roop?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah. So we'll start the program with welcome address by our professor and head of the department, Professor Dr. Chandalekha ma'am. And she is currently as our professor and HOD in the Department of Psychiatry, Savitha Medical College, Chennai. Madam has been actively involved in postgraduate teaching and has been examiner for more than 40 years. She has been the guiding force and instrumental in establishing the Department of Psychiatry in our institution. And her areas of interest have been institutional psychiatry, legal psychiatry, and rehabilitation for chronic mental illness patients. And she was instrumental in getting the Center of Excellence for Savitha Medical College Hospital Department of Psychiatry organized on World Health Day in 2007. So Madam will be delivering the welcome address now. Ma'am, please.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you, good afternoon and a warm welcome to all of you on behalf of Savitha Medical College. I feel privileged to invite my teacher, Dr. Suresh Kumar, who has been there with me for the past so many years since as a guiding force. Sir, I am reliving the days when you were with us in the pre-computer era when you helped us in our examinations. We are very privileged to have you today, sir, guiding about 470 students. I extend a warm welcome and request all of you to utilize this excellent opportunity. I hand over the podium to my colleague, Professor Shanti, who will be taking over. Thank you. Over to Shanti.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, madam. Clear.
Okay. On behalf of our respected Chancellor, on behalf of our Director and Dean of Savitha Medical College, the Department of Psychiatry extends a very warm welcome to all our esteemed speakers for today and for tomorrow. We extend a warm welcome also to the faculty who are probably registered, who are going to be viewing the program, and also for all the 470 odd postgraduates who have registered for this program. The format for this program is based entirely on the exam pattern that most of the universities throughout India would be conducting. We have kept that in mind, and that is how we have kind of charted this program as long cases, short cases, how do we face the Viva, the neurological testing, neurological cases, as well as psychological assessment. And as for today, we have handpicked 5 speakers who are experts in their own field. The first speaker is Dr. Hema Tharoor, who has done yeoman work in schizophrenia. And as Madam has mentioned, we have Dr. Suresh, who is a teacher for teachers. Then we have Dr. Vanishri, Dr. Vimal, and Dr. Vikas Menon, who will be talking on the 5 broad topics that we have, because we cannot cover all the topics. So we have chosen the 5 broad topics that will be kept as long cases for the examination. And for tomorrow, we have our faculty who will be discussing about 3 short cases, which are usually presented in the examination. And if time permits, we will also be discussing other short cases that can be kept for the exams. Following that, we have a very senior neurologist from Chennai who will be talking about neurology case discussion, EEG, and about imaging. Then we have a psychologist who will be talking entirely on psychological assessment from the examination point of view. Then to wind up, we have Dr. Raman who will be talking to the postgraduates about the bugbear that most of us PGs have, how to face a Viva. And then we will conclude the program. Now at the end of each session, we do have time for each speakers to answer to the queries. As Dr. Raman has mentioned, the postgraduates can post their questions in the chat box. And if there are too many questions, I request all the speakers to edit the questions so that we have to keep up to the time. And that is for today as well as for tomorrow. So without much ado, we will start with the first session of today, Dr. Hema Tharoor. We have our postgraduate who will be introducing all the speakers to all the postgraduates. And we really hope that it will be very useful, not only for the exam going postgraduates, but also the first years and the second years of the senior residents. So thank you very much. Over to Dr. Raman and to Dr. Madagi.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. And Professor Dr. Shanti Nambi, ma'am, has been very instrumental behind getting all the speakers within a span of 1 hour once the program was scheduled. And ma'am has been very actively involved in PG academics in our institution. And she's a known child psychiatrist and has established child psychiatry in ICH Chennai, and also very instrumental in starting inclusive education for children with special needs in the pupil school, which is attached to the Savita University. And she's a known speaker and invited chairperson and panelists in various national and international conferences, and has been examiners for both MD and DMD candidates for both more than 20 years. We are really privileged to have both our HOD and our professor who's been extremely in the active in the field of academics and PG training. So thank you so much, ma'am. And we will start the program. Dr. Matanki will be introducing the first speaker, Dr. Hema Tharoor, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Roop, slide, please. Okay.
First, we have with us Dr. Hema Tharoor, ma'am. Ma'am is a senior consultant at SCARF and Apollo Spectra Hospitals. She has over 20 years of experience in the field of psychiatry. She has received the Dr. TMA Pai Gold Medal for Excellence in Medical Research and has contributed to other awards also, such as the Dhruv Kumar Award for the Best Paper in Psychotherapy twice. Ma'am has over 40 publications in various international and national index journals and has also co-authored several chapters of books in psychiatry. Ma'am will be sharing her insights on the topic clinical approach to schizophrenia and related disorders. We are extremely privileged and honored to have you here with us, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay. Good afternoon, all of you. And at the outset, I want to thank Dr. Chandralekha, Professor Shanti Nambi, and Raman for this invite. Raman and I go a long way back, so it's a real pleasure when Raman called and expressed this idea. And I think it is the need of the hour. And like I would echo Professor Shanti's sentiments that I think students all over are bogged down when it's exam time. And I think this with psychiatry, it's so volatile, too much of information. How do you present? And it is like a do or die situation on that day. So what I'm going to do for the next 1 hour of the presentation is focus completely on how, what are the basic points that you need to be aware of when you're presenting or approaching a case of schizophrenia or a related condition, 1. 2, I'm going to just mix it a little with, see, examiners are of different variety. So what everybody, I think, uniformly is looking at is, do you have basic clinical knowledge? The next 24 hours, once you walk out of the institution, how will you manage this case? But since it's also an academic fest, I thought I'll just add in what my teachers have taught me in terms of, I think as a postgraduate, everybody should read and have a knowledge. And of course, when it is an exam situation, and I know many of you will be very competitive and are looking at scoring much more than what is intended. So I've added a little bit of theory, just points which you can go back and look at and upgrade and know that these are points that if you are aware of, it would help you during the exam to get much more marks than which you guys deserve. So the idea is to look at it more from a very pragmatic approach. And you can always, all of you who are here can feel free and ask questions. So I thought from an examination standpoint, like standard is if there's a case of a person with schizophrenia, we don't know, it depends on the center and the internal team who's sort of organizing the cases. But by and large, this is the buffet for you people. You have a long case, which could be the type of schizophrenia, kept mostly paranoid, catatonic. Sometimes the treatment resistant person is kept, the discussion going into treatment resistant. You could have a schizo-obsessive presentation as a short case. If time permits, I'll go into schizoaffective, but I would touch upon it. Short case, of course, sometimes the same person, a case of paranoid schizophrenia is discussed as a short case for just phenomenology, delusional disorder, substance-induced psychosis, and late onset, if you have somebody presenting with late onset for the first time. I wanted to call this a schizophrenia horoscope for all the students, so that if you're seeing somebody with, a person is coming to you and the moment you hear the HOPI in the exam, in your head, these are the things that you should keep in mind while you're taking the history. So age of the patient, socioeconomic status, build, of course, the gender, marital status, is the person functioning, we are looking at homemaker or professional, any stressor that precipitated this whole event. Do they have any medical, when you ask the history, is there any diabetes, any cardiac history? Again, depending on the center, if they've kept somebody with postpartum, somebody with schizophrenia having a postpartum presentation, is the point during the history, there is history of non-adherence. You want to look at, you have to keep in mind that you have to look at premorbid personality or temperament based on onset. Sometimes if by and large rule of thumb is children or adolescents are not kept as a long case, but if somebody is around 15, 16 or 14 can sort of give you a good history and it is something to suggest like a schizo-obsessive condition, it again depends on the center, the examiners. So, and also we are all trained in psychiatry for observation. So look at the person's face about acne. You must look at history, especially in women, and you want to inquire regarding menstrual history. And of course, like I mentioned about obesity. So I'm going straight diving into, let's say you have a case like this kept to you where somebody is coming, young person, 4 years history, academic decline, there's some history of posturing, poor ADL. So yes, all of us know that in your head you're looking at, you want to clarify for presence of hallucinations, hallucinatory behavior in all modality. You want to look at first rank symptoms. Over the years, there's a lot of controversy about the validity of first rank, which I think as postgraduates, you should read. You must ask about negative symptoms, obsessions, compulsions, very, very important, which are missed. Primary obsessive slowness in the history, the person will talk about, usually the family will say very slow in most of their activities. So why I put that slide and then coming to history is, in the HOPI, to all the students listening here, listen to the presenting complaint. The moment you hear the presenting complaint, you must think of a diagnosis. So you must start training yourself while you're training itself that in your, daily, while you're seeing the cases, that if I get this presenting complaint, what could be my possible diagnosis? Start training yourself like that. Now, is the presentation acute or is this a chronic? Is this episodic? Is this continuous? So the moment they tell you, the family and the patient, that, so like hearing voices and stuff for whatever period of months, your immediate thing is to start thinking, okay, this is schizophrenia, then what? So age of onset, very important. Male, female distinction. I'm mainly in terms of the onset, where we see females later onset, that we all know, but start thinking of diagnosis. So your general appearance and behavior, even though you're going to formally look at it in MSc, while you're doing the history, while you're speaking, keep observing. Don't lose that observation point. And always remember that focus on negative history, very relevant to your case. I think after a few years, when you're doing your residency, it becomes rote memory to say no history of head injury, no history of substance use. Be very relevant. Is there head injury that can, in any form, explain what you're seeing? So think before, what would be the proper negative history for this person who's presenting in front of you? And always ask for pre-morbid. If it's an adolescent, of course, we are talking about temperament. If it's an older person, you must spend some time on pre-morbid functioning. So just continuing on the HOPI, all of us now, cannabis is the new fad, but please don't ignore cannabis. At the same time, don't ignore nicotine. We know a lot of interaction between smoking and clozapine levels. So it's very, very important that you focus on the cannabis history and the smoking history. Always focus on one day in the person's life when it's a chronic. Just ask, so that you convey to the examiner, this is what the person does. So for that establishes functioning. That also history like this, nobody asks for posturing. Nobody talks about it unless you tell them. So you ask whether they're standing for long hours, sitting for long hours. Scrupulosity or increased religiosity is, many a times families don't talk about it, but many a times in schizo-obsessive disorder or somewhere where it looks like a chronic OCD with psychosis as a differential, a lot of history is lost when you don't ask about compulsive praying. So praying is a huge connotation, especially given our cultural values. So please ask about religiosity and praying, and spend some time on time taken to bathe. So they don't come out. Most of schizo-obsessive persons don't talk about hand washing, and they take a long time to bathe. They may sit for long hours in the bathroom. So the family thinks it's constipation, but ask about it. Active social avoidance or the spontaneous talk. So these things I've highlighted, specifically history, which you shouldn't miss. Negative history, keep a focus. So if this is the case, specific to the case, depending on the onset, if there's one hallucination, please comment on hallucinations in all other modality. Enquire if there's command hallucinations, especially in schizophrenia. If there is aggression, is there hallucinations which are, commanding in nature? I talked about nicotine use. Epilepsy has a huge, so more than head injury, please ask about history of epilepsy. Past treatment and family history, very important about admissions. If there is ECTs, inquire about the indication for ECT. Many patients can recall some names of drugs. Of course, in exam, you shouldn't mention trade names. So if you can get the name of the drug, document that. Please ask then about side effects like dystonia, oculogyric crisis. Most patients, because they will explain it to you, dystonia being very painful, they will describe it to you. Ask about EPS. And of course, in family history of schizophrenia, be very specific to ask about history of schizophrenia, psychosis in first degree relatives, OCD, as you all know, has shared genetics, wandering behavior, and suicide. I'm again highlighting cannabis because it's always missed sometimes. You forget to ask in the history, especially in young patients. Mental status examination, very, very important. Like general appearance and behavior. How is the person sitting in front of you, talking to you, eye contact, looking away, all this, keep a focus. If there is a catatonic person, make sure that you talk about all the signs and you've elicited. So here you're eliciting that mutism is not there, negativism is not there, is very, very important. There is no other Bible-like fish for this. So I just highlighted it because it's postgraduates. There's also a very interesting paper. It was published in Indian Journal of Psychiatry. The author is Dr. Ahuja on organic catatonia. Till date, I've not seen any other paper that's as extensive as explaining. I mean, it's all there in one paper talking about clinical conditions that you should rule out. So as a postgraduate, what should you know? You should know all the catatonic signs. You should know about Bush-Francis catatonic rating scale. And you should also, in a case of catatonic schizophrenia, in a younger patient, or even the mid elderly patient, you should talk about negative symptoms suggesting encephalitis. Now, there's a lot of noise about anti-NMDA receptor encephalitis. So talk about fever, rigidity prior to the attack. Again, it could be a dissociative catatonia, NMS, just to keep in mind these points. Thought and content, this is where I thought all of us are very, I mean, it's a no-brainer to write easily about the content of thought, but as far as formal thought disorder is concerned, always look at if the person is not, if there's poverty of speech, then like I've mentioned here, all of us should be aware of Kleist, schizophasia, FTD assessment, this close method and type token ratio. The textbooks, especially if most of you are following Dr. Neeraj Ahuja's postgraduate textbook, I think there's a very nice volume 1, chapter 2 gives a very nice description about all this, close method, type token. Delusions I want to highlight, please describe in exam about systematization, elaborate the delusion, fixity, primary, secondary, a conviction of the delusion. So unless you describe it in these formats, the examiner is left wondering, have you understood properly about the whole phenomenology? In this area, I think I've put these names so that they are important. Carl Schneider, Kurt Schneider, Carl Schneider. And so a lot of time it's a nice viva question to ask, and most of us students fumble there between Carl and Kurt. Kurt Schneider first rank, Carl Schneider thinking disturbances, Cameron describing delusion, Leonard types of catatonic schizophrenia, and Kendler, of course, the vectors of when you describe delusion. Insight, again, all of us know the grades of insight, but as a student watching the patient and talking to the patient in exam, if you can quickly ask the person 3 things. Is he aware that this is mental illness? Does he accept this is schizophrenia? And what does he attribute it? So sometimes students get confused, and if he says, I've got schizophrenia, I'm taking medication, sometimes you grade the person much higher, but always remember that these 3 factors should be fulfilled. Quickly, just this is 1 minute on, this is an ode to my teacher. So I just thought I'll put it here, and I'm teaching postgraduate. So Jasper's talk about delusion and Kendler's vectors. So this is purely, like I said, if you're aware of this concept, it's very, very examiners. It purely depends on the examiner style of questioning, but it's always nice that you finish post-graduation knowing about Jasper and the different Kendler's vectors related to delusion. If there's a case, since we're on delusion, I'm spending a minute on delusional disorder here, always kept as a short case, but you must be able to identify what kind of delusions, the subtypes. And always in a delusional disorder, there's a question asked about overvalued ideas. The definition of overvalued idea, remember, it can happen in all of us, normal people, and it has associated with the feeling and tone that takes precedence. So this definition I've put up there for all of you to look at it. And of course, know what the primary delusions are, what the secondary delusions are. A quick glance at schizoaffective disorder before I go into the main approach in schizophrenia. Please know now about DSM-5 criteria for schizophrenia, schizoaffective, what have been the new changes. And like we all know now, the cross-sectional concept is taken off in schizoaffective disorder in DSM-5. And DSM-5 talks about only delusions and hallucinations. in the absence of a major mood disorder. In DSM-4 earlier, you could have it along with the mood disorder. So you must know the differences when you appear for the exams. This is one. Sometimes if you have a classic case of somebody above 45 to 50 years, there's no other cognitive decline, presenting with paraphrenia, meaning having delusions, schizophrenia-like illness, hallucinations. So again, Roth described this. This can be kept. Parallelly, I've shown you all what you need to know in a late onset psychosis. Since this is not, the late onset can be kept as a short case, and then discussion can go on to asking about subcortical dementias, and this could be a presentation in Parkinson's. Since that's there'll be paucity of time, I just thought I'll just put a slide here to say look up late onset psychosis also as a short case. So coming back to our main schizophrenia, DSM-5, ICD will all, since we're looking at it regularly, but for exam, make sure that you're aware now of the lack of the categories, and it's more domain-based, symptom-based diagnosis, only one symptom. So you must know about the DSM-5, and catatonia can be used as a specifier. So what do we do about treatment goals? All of us know that this is just a chart to keep in mind. So to sum up so far, you know the history, you're looking at the MSc, the main points, you've come to treatment. Remember, you have to think of what do I do for this case? So for this case, how do I, if this person, the main thing is to tell the examiner, how will I manage this person? And then how do I take it forward? So management, remember, is at acute, maintenance, and stable. Invariably 99.9% an acutely violent person is not going to be kept for the exam. It can come in discussion. So your plan is to tell the examiner, do you want an OP or an IP basis, and why? Justify why you want to do it an OP basis or an IP basis. What sort of antipsychotic are you going to choose, first or second generation? Talk about the dosing, tolerability. Always what students forget is when you suggest a drug, that's why I first remember I talked about the horoscope of the schizophrenic person. Cost is very, very important. So sometimes if it's a non-adherent, poor patient, sometimes in the anxiety, many of us end up talking about paliperidone long-acting, and then when the examiner is asking you about cost, you're like, regretting that you said the answer. So always remember cost, side effect profile. And sometimes it's a person where you think you have to talk about clozapine, think about it, ECTs. Physical examination like BMI, very, very important. You have to mention BMI because we know about metabolic syndrome. The relevant investigations, please don't get into a habit of simply talking about LFTs, RFTs. Is that relevant for the case? And are you going to sort of examine the RFT for this person? Rating scales again, PAN, SANS, SAPS, you all know about brief psychiatric rating scale. So you must be aware minimum about all this when you're thinking about managing the person. Prognosis, again, always prognosticate your patient, and you must know about good prognostic factors and poor prognostic factors. So make sure that you talk about prognosis when you have a patient in front of you. Again, some small points with management is if it's a thin person, so you must justify, like I said, your first line of management. If you're thinking of olanzapine, if it's a working professional who is presenting to you and does not want increased sedation, so that's why you consider amisulpride and you want to give a low dose of benzodiazepine. A lot of nowadays our patients are very worried about side effects, and they read up, they don't want, if they are prone to acne, severe acne, young married females, the amenorrhea is a huge issue. So you need to be very, very individualized and suggest about the management plan. Again, if they're married and childbearing, and you're wondering what antipsychotic to use. So you must have these points in mind. And when somebody is aggressive and very violent, old is gold. I still believe there is the way haloperidol and chlorpromazine act on the person. There's no other drug that matches that efficacy. So always think why you're justifying a certain drug. And again, if the appetite is an issue, olanzapine. So coming specifically to the management, like we go back to our person who's in front of you in the exam, you're justifying IP versus OP. Always look at drug dosing. when you're talking about IP admissions, please talk about the optimum dose. So somebody who's a little aggressive, don't go to say you will give 5 mg haloperidol. Always say you will give a 10 mg haloperidol or a 10 to 20 mg haloperidol. So talk about optimal dosing when you're dealing with the patient in that aggressive phase. Again, if somebody is in catatonia, always know that the dose is 10 to 12 mg of, the maximum of course said is 24 mg of of lorazepam, but I think that's where I said you have to apply practical knowledge. 12 mg is the maximum, go in for 5 days. If you're thinking no response, think of ECT. Partial response, you must taper it. Otherwise, if you abruptly stop the lorazepam, there's a risk of catatonia again. So choosing an antipsychotic in an exam situation when you're thinking about, you're looking at, again, the person, the history, the diagnosis, what would be the ideal choice. And nowadays you can also tell the examiner that, yes, I would like to have a shared decision making with the family members talking about these components. Sorry. ECT indications, you all must all know this, catatonic, in schizophrenia, I mean, catatonic schizophrenia, very aggressive and violent, refusing medications or oral intake, augment as an augmentation strategy to antipsychotics, to reduce symptom severity. And very, very important is sometimes many of our patients can use ECT as a maintenance strategy. So that's something to keep in mind. Minimum is 6, you can go up to 10 to 12. So when you're suggesting ECT, please don't say 3 or 4 in exam. You must talk about the minimum number of ECTs you'd like to give. So that was the first case I talked about. Sometimes in exam, somebody with an early onset at 15, you'll get history of compulsive washing and checking, psychosis now for more than 15 years. Many times, so you all are worried about how to approach the patient management plan. Always remember clozapine. So when you see somebody very early onset, you can confidently discuss about giving clozapine with aripiprazole, clozapine with the SSRI combination. So talk about this, especially in early onset, presenting for so many years of duration. A quick note on the drugs. Always you must be aware of the receptor profile. This is, I think Dr. Raman mentioned he would be sharing the slides. So you must have an aware of the drugs and their mechanism of action side. Because if you're choosing a certain drug, the most common question is why, and you must have a reason why you're choosing this drug over another drug. This is just for all of you students to have the minimum effective dose to maximum a snapshot. The slide is self-explanatory. I've put a comparison of guidelines just to tell you all that all guidelines talk about 4 to 8 weeks, 6 to 12 weeks, and talk about 2 to 5 years. But again, it's not like a gold standard, but a rough in terms of where they've looked at the guidelines and said that, okay, which works. But first episode, now the dictum is to monitor the patient for 2 years. And then if it's more than 1 episodes to 5 years, and again, multiple episodes lifetime. And you must insist on talking about psychosocial management. I'll be spending some time on that in a minute. So remember, the 2 major studies that are asked in the exam are about KT and Cutlass. And being aware of this is very important when you discuss the advantages. But remember, there's the KT findings and KT non-responder findings also as exam going students, you all should be aware, and the comparator molecule being perfenacin. This is a very important study to just know. So I've just put it up, the Lewis work comparing efficacy, side effect profile. So I've just have this so that PGs can have this as to look at how clozapine work the best in terms of all-cause discontinuation, less number of patients. So just look at this for your future reference. Again, like what I just mentioned now, NICE, MAUDSLAY, all talk about the 2 years for the acute, stabilization phase for 12 months, and stable phase, what I just mentioned. Coming to case minute 3, we are talking about treatment resistant as a discussion. So there quickly, I want to talk about clozapine. And there's been, if you, let's say the exam, some examiners may ask you about, do you know of any other alternative where There are papers published from NIMANS and SCARF related to giving specific estrogen receptor modulators for treatment resistance. So this is just for you to look at it so that you're aware. So again, in treatment resistant with a medical comorbidity, what do you do? If somebody is a good responder to clozapine, again, augmentation with amisulpride. I'll just talk about TRS and mention this in detail. In TRS, things that postgraduates should know, the Kane and the modified Kane criteria. I've put it up for you for reference. There's also this treatment response, resistance, and psychosis working group, which talks about specific specifiers for treatment resistance. So this is also important that you all should know. There's a Brenner's criteria for TRS looking at based on rehab, which also you all should be aware. And in managing TRS, there's a concept of pseudo resistance. So these are the questions that can be asked about how did you establish TRS? And this is a nice checklist to be aware of as exam going students, to whether is my case actually schizophrenia? Have I diagnosed it wrongly? How do you review it? How do you look at treatment, drug-drug interaction? So this is a good checklist to be aware of. And this is a nice flow chart, what I just said now, looking at pseudo resistance. Which dose, whether higher dose will work or you can switch an antipsychotic. In fact, both don't show any differences in outcomes. And then clozapine and monitoring of clozapine right from the 13-week guidelines to the 18-week guidelines, and about how you should do the weekly monitoring. And after the 13 weeks for 6 months, about once in 2 weeks monitoring. So always remember clozapine out of all the antipsychotics is proven to be the most efficacious and gold standard in TRS. And combinations of clozapine that have been studied are frequently is with risperidone. Of course, with clozapine resistant people also has been studied, where they've looked at clozapine with amisulpride and clozapine with aripiprazole. Also, when questions are asked about clozapine resistance, you must know about clozapine levels. That's about 350 nanogram per ml. And nowadays, with this newer neuromodulation, awareness about history when you ask transcranial magnetic and TDCS is important. The Amicus trial is also something that you can look up, where they've looked at clozapine non-resistant with amisulpride. This is again a flow chart to look at TRS recommendations for positive, negative, cognitive, and how you'll combine what I just said now in a slide. I just thought I'll talk about psychosis in pregnancy, which is very, very important. This was someone who was doing very well on clozapine amisulpride combination. And remember in exam to talk about liaising with the OBGYN diabetologist. This person was diabetic too. So one gold standard is if you're looking at typicals, trifluoperazine, atypicals, olanzapine. In this juncture, you can look up Dr. Jayashree Kulkarni's papers on how they've looked at course and outcome, followed up all antipsychotic. And right now the guideline is not to stop the drug, which they were doing very well on pre-pregnancy. And there have been reports of even now, newer reports coming about continuing clozapine during breastfeeding and measuring the levels of, looking at TCANC levels in the newborn, and that we could discuss during discussion. If you get the history in the person in the exam that the person is non-adherent, then always remember that a long-acting injectable, when you talk about long-acting injectable for frequency and maintenance, you must talk about it. And again, cost in the exam. So when you're picking up an depot antipsychotic, always think about the socioeconomic status of the patient. Tardive dyskinesia is an important concept. As PGs must be aware of Schuler and Kane criteria. I've also put the DSM-5. So that's normally asked about TD, and the risk factors. So female sex, diabetic, affective disorders. I've put this up for all of you to look at risk factors for TD if they're asked. Hyperprolactinemia is again an interesting concept, which is always asked in exams. What do you do for hyperprolactinemia if you've chosen risperidone or amisulpride? Always remember that you must talk about symptomatic hyperprolactinemia and biochemical hyperprolactinemia. So the biochemical is you have a lab value which is high, but you don't have any symptoms. Person is getting periods regularly, and you don't see, not reporting of any of the sexual side effects or weight gain or anything. The symptomatic one is when you have the symptoms. So what are your challenge in the exam? So if the examiner says, okay, this person is a good responder to risperidone, what will you do? But the person has hyperprolactinemia, then you always have to say that you will reduce the dose and augment with aripiprazole. Or the other option is where you switch. But the problem in switching is you're getting a relapse. So this is something that you must think of, where somebody is a good responder to risperidone or amisulpride. You add aripiprazole, but also you can take the help of gabapentin or bromocriptine. And again, in bromocriptine, you must watch for worsening of psychosis. And most likely when you stop the drug, you stop the drug to which they have response and then completely go to aripiprazole or a prolactin sparing drug, then what happens is the relapse is there. So this is a question that's frequently asked. So remember, I just mentioned this now. So you can give risperidone with aripiprazole, amisulpride with aripiprazole, augment or reduce the antipsychotic dose. I just one few minutes on metabolic disturbances. It is very, very important and to keep it in mind. And this is a chart to look at weight gain, dyslipidemia, and the diabetes. And when you look at the person and he's very obese, and so again, like I said, that's why earlier I put thin person, olanzapine, obese person. So think when you answer if somebody is very obese, where already that's why recording the BMI is very, very important when you present in the exam. Again, the ADA, we all talk about monitoring the patient, again, depending. So in practicals, when you're talking about, you can say that you'll get the baseline, lipid profile, you've seen the BMI, you'll talk about lifestyle modifications and monitoring them. Again, keep factoring in at least see here they talk about this. When you see the guidelines, you're confused in exam what to say, but at least say that you'll do a regular monitoring at least 3 to 6 months intervals. Again, the cardiac profile to keep in mind about QTC interval. And if you're starting clozapine, to keep in mind about myocarditis, eosinophilia, cardiomyopathy, and looking at QTC prolongation. This you must be aware, and the sudden cardiac death. A quick few points on PORT. Be aware of PORT and the psychosocial treatment in schizophrenia, which will be asked. Family interventions are very, very important. Vocational training, which is pre-vocational and supported, because anytime a person with schizophrenia, again, I said the examiner can go to the psychosocial management of this person. Token economy, you must be aware of reinforcing positive behavior, social skills training, psychoeducation, very, very important. Assertive community treatment, which is also, you must be aware of. Cognitive therapy in psychosis. Of course, up till avatar therapy is being talked about, but at least, like I said, I'm sticking to the basics and adding certain things. So if you have a snapshot of this, where you're looking at, this is the patient in front of you, this is the history I have, so I must talk about in management plan about functioning and what I can do for his, improving quality of life. So to conclude, history of presenting illness itself, think of diagnosis. The presenting complaints. History, think of diagnosis. MSc, think of diagnosis. Diagnostic formulation and management should be very, very individualized based on the case. There is enough of guidelines available, but apply your practical knowledge. Your teachers are your biggest guidelines. So what you have learned in the 3 years with your whatever has been taught to you, you have the guidelines also, but be practical in the exam, because that's what we're all looking at. What is the student trying to portray? As a teacher myself, I think all of you must read during postgraduate training. So I've just put a reading list since I have no time. So all these are related to schizophrenia, which if you all know, which will be very, very effective. Again, first rank, second rank, third rank, paraphrenia, Roth, pseudo community, all these are points. Like I said, KT non-responder is a good question that's always asked. recent advances are asked sometimes. So nowadays, from neurodegenerative to inflammatory, by the time all of you go for exams, new drug targets can be asked, white matter changes. And yeah, thank you for a very patient listening.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It's always a pleasure to listen to your teacher again and again. So thank you so much, ma'am, for highlighting all the important aspects from history till management in very detail. There are a few questions, ma'am.
Yeah, sure.
Ma'am, should we comment on MHCA admission type and section if we suggest IP care?
Sorry.
Should we, the student is asking, should we comment on MHCA admission type, mental health care, like the recent act, based on that, should we comment on admission type and section when we are suggesting IP care? If you are just saying that, like, I would like to admit the patient, so they're asking whether should we comment or talk about it based on MHCA, the type of admission and the section.
Yes, I think in the current environment, if you talk about it, it creates a good impression. So the fact that you're, of course, what's more important is you justify why you want IP. And if you can elaborate on the, without, you can be very short and specific on what voluntary, involuntary, and of course, go quickly. What the examiners are waiting for is what drug you choose. So, yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Many are like, is there any difference in the efficacy within second generation antipsychotic?
Okay, so that's why I put between the second generation in terms of symptom control, no, except for, like I said, clozapine and TRS. But otherwise, first and second are equally effective. There's no difference. The difference is in the side effect profile and tolerability.
Okay. What about lurazidone and other antipsychotics when prolactin is concerned, when there is hyperprolactinemia? Can we consider lurazidone or?
Yeah, so again, see, so this is exam situation. So you're going to talk about somebody whom you would want to give lurazidone as your first drug of choice. So that is where you must think. So if this person, it's very based on the person's past history, treatment history, and the first time giving lurazidone over, let's say, your any other drug like olanzapine or other drugs, aripiprazole, you must have a valid reason. So there's nothing wrong in suggesting lurazidone. So this is what I'm saying. In exam, we are looking at how can you justify why you want to give lurazidone. That's all. So you can't say, I want to give lurazidone because I'm worried about hyperprolactinemia right now. You must all, because the person's, you're looking at symptom, you're looking at, of course, you're factoring in the person's hyperprolactinemia history also, but you must also know how to justify why you chose the drug. And again, in schizophrenia, you have to give lurazidone at a much, I mean, what I'm saying, the dose for lurazidone should go up to at least 160 mg for efficacy. So you must think about it and think about the side effects. So that's why I said, what is the symptom? And then decide on the antipsychotic.
Thank you, ma'am. So what should we do if there is increased prolactin, but there are no symptoms? Should we still treat?
Yeah, continue. So monitor the person. So if it is, like I said, if it is a biochemical hyperprolactinemia where you have checked, so always there is this recommendation to do a baseline prolactin levels. Just that, again, it depends on, the cost. So it's very expensive to do prolactin test repeatedly. So let's say you've done it and you have a baseline value, a value which is high, but there are no symptoms, you repeat, but you can also give the vitamin B6 and gabagoline to bring it down, or aripiprazole.
Okay. Can we give?
Just to add, when they've looked at studies where they see somebody with a biochemical or a symptomatic hyperprolactinemia, which they've looked longitudinally, mostly after 3 to 5 years, it sort of settles down. That's what I mean. I have the reference here. I can share it when Dr. Raman is sending it over to all of you to read about.
Okay, sure, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Can we make a diagnosis of schizoobsessive disorder as per ICD-10?
No. Good question. So you have to say dual diagnosis, but yes, you can't say schizo. I must say that all examiners are obsessed with ICD diagnosis. So you can't say schizo-obsessive.
Sure, ma'am. Can long-acting injectables be started in acute phase?
Long-acting so again, in acute phase, you're looking at acute management. So if you're saying you will think of a long-acting, what we all want to hear from the student is you're going to give a like a haloperidol short-acting or a clopixol, and then say that, hey, this person is non-adherent for long term. I'll put this and I'll consider a long-acting depot for managing his symptoms. That's fine.
Okay. Ma'am, which antipsychotic should be considered in obese female patient with severe psychotic symptoms?
So obesity and severe psychotic symptoms, you can pick ziprasidone. If you want, the problem with ziprasidone when you say it is, since you specifically said obese and highlighted it, the right answer is ziprasidone. But will it be the wise answer is what you need to think in the exam. So see, that's the trick here in the exam situation. If you say ziprasidone, and many a time, so all during your residency, and see, to just share my experience, I don't recall during residency or practice jumping and writing ziprasidone just because the person is obese. So you will say the person is obese, severity of psychosis, I look at, so you would have got the history, you will think of lifestyle modifications and other plans for her rather than say I will give ziprasidone in this person. But if the examiner says among the antipsychotics, the person is so obese, which will be the correct, then you understand that the examiner wants ziprasidone. So then say ziprasidone.
Okay. Which treatment guidelines is expected in the exam?
Your teacher's guidelines. I always believe that. See, you have, in fact, the Indian Psychiatric Society's guidelines also very good. I'm saying all the guidelines are there, but then please follow your guru's guidelines is my guideline.
Okay, thank you. First, second and third rank symptoms is old concept. Should we spell it out in the exam?
No, but please be aware. It's a lovely viva. Tomorrow, Dr. Raman will tell you. It's a great viva question.
Okay, sure. Ma'am, if the onset of symptoms is within 14 days and patient fulfills criteria for schizophrenia, can we say acute in onset and then diagnose schizophrenia?
No, you'll fail. You have not read ICD-10.
Sure. Choice of antipsychotic in early onset psychosis. Any preference list?
Sorry, Raman?
Ma'am, choice of antipsychotics in early onset schizophrenia. Any preference list is asking.
So there is a lot of literature talking about low. So again, early onset age, the discussion will come to ethics and about starting early. But yes, there's literature to say about low dose risperidone and amisulpride. Looking at the, very early onset psychosis group from Australia and, So there your discussion will veer towards starting, again, prodrome discussion. You'll have a huge discussion with the examiner on, do you need to treat prodrome? Can you just observe the person? Yeah. And treat the symptoms, I'm saying.
How to present the diagnosis in the form of single provisional diagnosis or with differential diagnosis?
So again, the rule of thumb is, like I said, it's individualized. If the person has only one diagnosis, don't jump and give a differential unless you can't sort of, justify the differential. So if you have a long-standing history and you want to say paranoid schizophrenia versus schizoaffective disorder, depressive type, you must have enough information. Just because, let's say, the person talks about, a low mood and not enough to qualify for mood symptoms, don't jump and do it, is all I'm saying.
Okay.
So you don't have to do it. And don't think just because you gave differential, examiners are very happy. They are only thinking, wow, you fell into the net. Now, let's ask you why you've given this differential. Yeah.
And this is an interesting question. So if a patient has multiple episodes of less than 1 month psychotic episodes, can we just make a diagnosis of ATPD alone?
Yeah. So there, what is interesting is the whole concept of non-affective remitting psychosis, Susser and Wanderling, Chandigarh acute psychosis study, all that you should be aware of. So again, postgraduates, the Neeraj Ahuja postgraduate book, it's a very, very good chapter on acute psychosis, covers all this that this person is asking. Again, seasonality in psychosis that remits, again, Jasper's reactive psychosis concepts, all this will be asked. So yes, you're right in asking about acute psychosis. See, even previously when you asked if it's less than 2 weeks and if there's symptoms of schizophrenia, don't jump and say schizophrenia, say acute psychosis, schizophrenia like the pleomorphic picture, all that you must justify.
We keep hearing aripiprazole as an individual drug is not as effective as risperidone in controlling psychosis. Like, can you please tell us on aripiprazole as a standalone antipsychotic?
Again, see, you must also give credit to your guru's long-standing learning experience. And so again, so there is a lot of, in exam, if the person has, like I said, schizophrenia with OCD, you giving aripiprazole, nobody will question that because, or pre-morbidly, there's a history of schizotypal and you're saying that, hey, I want to try aripiprazole with clozapine or aripiprazole standalone. Nobody will question it. But like I presented the first case minute, if you're going to say my first drug of choice is aripiprazole, just be ready to know everything about aripiprazole. So somebody, even the examiner talks about akathisia, he's trying to say, okay, he's already agitated, won't aripiprazole worsen the akathisia? So that's why I'm saying, as a standalone drug, can I pick aripiprazole? Yes, but you must also know. That's why I put up those Steven Stahl slides on the molecule. Please know why you're choosing, side effects, and justify that,
One last question, ma'am. If smokeless tobacco chewing is not a complaint, should it be included as a comorbid diagnosis?
In terms of, see, because we get a lot of people who are doing that. So you have to, like I mentioned about where in the history, somebody is on clozapine and he's doing, and the person is having, so there will be a lot of discussion on the effect of, nicotine. And so smokeless also you must include in the history and write it as or do a comorbid diagnosis.
Yeah, just like before we conclude, ma'am, if patient is a chronic alcoholic, meets with an accident with head injury, abstinent from alcohol after the accident, but has onset of psychosis 6 months after the accident. If there is no neurological deficit or evidence on imaging, should alcohol and head injury be included in precipitating factors? And should alcohol history be mentioned in HOPI?
No, so
the onset of psychosis is after 6 months of alcohol abstinence. So that's what he or she is.
Thank that person. I feel like I'm sitting in the exam now. I don't have the age of the person. So see, that's why I put that slide up. The age is very, very important. And we talk about temporal relationship, right? So the rule of thumb is if you're going to only talk about the 6 months history of the psychosis now, and you said the alcohol was stopped way ago, head injury, and that's why right from HOPI, let's say you got this history and you're going to, in your mind, I would like to say, good, this question was asked. It's little like playing chess, where you have to rearrange it properly, because if this is the person and you're going to, in the end, you're not, no cognitive deficits, he's abstinent, this is just psychosis at 45, let's say, then you want to say that, okay, and you make sure MSc, you've done your cognitive function assessment and all that, then you shift the alcohol history into relevant past psychiatric history and medical history. But no, you're getting some cognitive, when you talk to the informant and all that, then incorporate. So that is where I'm saying, please think on your feet there and then add it along.
So thank you so much, ma'am. Actually,
But for the interruption, Raman,
yes,
one postgraduate has asked to Dr. Hema Tharoor whether she can share the slides. And
Yes.
another postgraduate wants to know whether she can get the slides tomorrow because she's got her exams.
Oh my God.
So if the speakers give us permission, we can share the PowerPoint.
I'll just email Raman ASAP. Right now.
Sure. Thank you so much, ma'am. Actually, most of the students have felt like excellent presentation as we see in the chat box. So thank you so much, ma'am. It's a pleasure to hear the teachers who have taught us. And I'm really privileged and honored to have you as a first speaker, ma'am. So thank you so much, ma'am. Thanks a lot for the presentation.
And thank you so much, Dr. Shanti Nambi and Raman. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Matangi. Ma'am, kindly close the slide alone.